In this video, I'm going to show you how to scratch build your own realistic science fiction buildings. I'm going to use mine for Warhammer 40k, but they'd be great for Star Wars Legion as well. The best part about this project is that most of the materials come from my local dollar store. When you find a good dollar store, they'll give you the grabbing arm so you can get things off the top shelf. So right now what I'm doing is I'm looking for rounded plastic objects that are going to look great as a science fiction building. Like this light here, for example. I should be able to get this down with no problem. Okay, maybe not. Stuff like this. This is what we're looking for. Round things, smooth things, Tupperware, tubs, things like that. Okay, I should be able to get this foam ball. That'll make a nice domed roof. Okay, this is getting embarrassing. Let's get back to the workshop. So now that we're back from the dollar store, I'm going to use this little hot wire foam cutter I got on Amazon. This and all the other materials that I used in this video that aren't from the dollar store will be linked in the description if you want to get your own. I don't usually use fancy gadgets like this to the extent that this is fancy. I usually just use a craft knife, but for this one particular use, which is cutting these foam balls, I figured a smooth line would be better, and so here I go. And that worked well, but you can see all that smoke billowing. It's been a long time since I used one of these things, and I don't miss that smell of burning foam, let me tell you. But anyways, I'm going to grab one of my Tupperwares, and I'm going to cut that rim off the bottom just to make it look a little bit less like a piece of Tupperware. So with that cut off, I'm going to take this water gun. And this bad boy has this nice piece here, this green one, so I'm just going to rip that off and throw the rest of it in the bits box. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Next I'm going to use this thing that I found at a thrift store, which I think is part of a fish tank filter, but I'm not really sure. And I'm just blocking in my shapes right now with this little Christmas tin, that half a foam sphere, and now I'm going to use a takeout tray to make a nice little wall. The shape of it has these great smooth curves and lines that very sci-fi. I cut a strip of Foamcore to act as a bit of reinforcement for the inside of this takeout container. Bend that in half and make a nice crisp interior edge. I then trace the outside of my Tupperware to get a similar curve so I can make a floor that works with that. Here you can see how I'm gluing the pieces together. I'm using a piece of Foamcore to act as a spacer so that these two things have enough contact to stay on with the construction adhesive. If you've ever watched my video before, you'll know I love these construction adhesive. It's got the texture of like a thick icing, but it bonds really strong and is quite tacky to begin with, so it's one of my favorite glues. I'm also using some hot glue, like here, when I just want a little bit of a less messy thing that dries instantly. Mix and match glues throughout the project. That's how you show people you're an expert, am I right? Alright, so there I've got a nice little balcony that I've built. I'm going to glue this onto the rest of the structure with hot glue because it bonds instantly and is really good for something like this. As you can see, it makes a nice little area for my Tau fellas here to defend. It is quite flimsy though, which is why on the underside I'm going to use the construction adhesive in quite a generous amount and a scrap piece of foam to just reinforce the whole thing and add more points of contact. Here's a little frisbee that I got at the dollar store. I guess it's for smaller dogs. I don't know why you need it. I think any dog can handle a full-size frisbee, so I'm not really sure what the point of this one is, but you get this nice rounded shape. This would have made a nice detail for this area on the side here, but I didn't end up using them. I mean, I glued them together and I thought about using them, but at the end of the day it just didn't work out, so I didn't use them. But I included it in the process anyways, just to let you guys know that sometimes I go down a path a little ways before I change my mind. So here's some ready-made spackle, and this I'm going to apply to my styrofoam ball here just to smooth out some of that styrofoam texture that you can see. I wet my hands and smear it around, massaging gently, and then I wet my hands even more to get an even shinier, slipperier surface. And you can see you can get it pretty even if you use enough water on your hand. I wasn't sure what I was going to do in that area where I aborted the frisbee thing, so I started sketching and coming up with ideas that I could maybe put in that area where the frisbees weren't working out. As you can see, I did a couple different alien shapes and was just kind of brainstorming the overall look of the structure. Normally I do this at the beginning, but this is just fine. If you want to work on your own drawing skills like I need to, then you might enjoy the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity. Perhaps you want to improve your skills in sculpting, drawing, 3D modeling, or video editing. I'm personally enjoying boning up on my illustration skills in this course by Jazza. Jazza is a great teacher and brings an infectious enthusiasm that really inspires me to try new things and push myself when drawing. Skillshare has no ads, and they're always launching new premium classes, so you can stay focused and follow your inspirations on your learning journey. Skillshare is also incredibly affordable. It's less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. So make 2021 a year of learning, guys. Time is what you make of it. Skillshare empowers you with all the tools you need to build real skills and grow your knowledge of the things you're passionate about. If you don't have anything specific in mind, just browse the hundreds of classes and you might be seized by inspiration. Skillshare believes a strong community is essential to personal growth. So tap into the support of fellow creatives who provide encouragement, communication, and inspiration. When you join, you can try one of Skillshare's new live classes and experience real-time inspiration as you connect with popular teachers while watching and working along with other members. So check it out, guys. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium to explore their creativity. Thanks, Skillshare. Alright, now let's get back to the build. So next I'm going to use one of these little lights that has the pressy thing. What do you call that? Tap light? I remember there's an infomercial for these when I was a kid. Anyways, you open the back of it. This little part, don't need it. Gone. So we're going to use this bubble shape and this rim. And these are going to make a nice little balcony for us. I'm going to start by tracing out that rim and cutting that out carefully on some Foamcore. And then fit that inside to make the area that the models will stand on. And then using a craft saw, I'm going to cut a little pathway in so that the figures can enter into it. A little bit of hot glue, and I glue that around the outside. And then I'm going to make something to support it by roughly sketching it out on some XPS foam. This stuff's available at Home Depot and is one of my favorite crafting tools because, as you can see, you can cut it into any shape you want. Next I add the bubble to the bottom, and I sand the piece of support structure smooth a little bit. Here I'm adding a little walkway to cover up that weird shape on the fish tank filter that doesn't really do much for me. And this will add more of a sort of accessible area for the models, and I'll connect that to that lower balcony by carving up a piece of XPS foam into a simple set of stairs. Just like that. I'm going to cover up this other edge with a panel of chipboard as well. This is too much gesso. I don't know why I poured it directly onto the thing like that, but this is gesso. I'm using this to seal and protect the XPS foam because in the next stage I'm going to spray the whole thing gray. And this, as you can see, I used a 2-in-1 primer and spray paint to make everything gray just so I could visualize things more easily. Now let's get back to this support piece. Some of these rough edges from where I sloppily cut it need to be smoothed out, so I'm using this pre-made spackle again. That worked out nicely. You can see here an area where I burned it with the glue gun. So guys, always remember to unplug your glue gun when you're not using it. Anyways, I use a little bit more construction adhesive on the top of this thing, and I put my little balcony made from the light right on top of there. That's a nice alien shape. I'll leave it upside down like that to dry. And once it's set, I'm going to come back in with some more construction adhesive and just slap that right on the side there. Good. Time to smooth out my dome. I was going to sand it right here, but then I realized I'll get dust on everything. But since it's a container with a lid, I can just take it off and sand it right in my hand here, which is handy. I just gently sand this with quite a fine grit sandpaper, and I folded up the paper to get that area in between there, just to make the edge a little bit neater. And then with a wet paper towel, just clean up my workspace before the dust gets everywhere. Check out this large novelty pen. The end of this here is a nice little sci-fi shape, don't you think? Here's another squirt gun that I've had in my bits box for a while. I want this piece here, so rather than cutting it off gracefully, I'm going to struggle on camera and finally twist it off. Victory. That's a beautiful little piece though, don't you think? I want this end too. Nice. Alright, I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to glue some pieces from a soap dispenser on it. This is the piece that screws in the top of the bottle, and this is the piece that goes down into the soap. And just like that, oh, come on. Bond! Bond! There it is. A nice little sci-fi shape. Here's a plumbing fixture and my squirt gun bit, and those together will make another little thing. I cut a piece of Foamcore on an angle to connect my balcony at the top to the other part. If you can't tell, I'm just making this up as I go along, guys. But that's the most fun way to do it. So I suggest you try building like this yourself. It's really freeing. So here I'm using a pencil to gently mark out and then carve out a little panel shape on my dome roof. Cutting some cereal box cardboard into some very precise shapes. And these are going to be a nice bit of detail for the top panel here. This has actually turned out to be one of my favorite parts of the build. I find this little interlocking tab pattern to be very compelling as a science fiction detail. Nice. As you can see, my little Tau fella, he works great on there. If you enjoy the sort of content I make, I'd love to have you as a patron on Patreon. I've said it before, but there's something incredibly psychologically powerful for me as a creator when I see that somebody has signed up and said, you know what, that is worth supporting. I do like what he's doing, and I want him to keep doing it. And it really lights a fire under me to keep making cool videos for you guys, and I appreciate it a ton. You also get your name in the credits, and get to join our Discord server and see behind the scenes photos over on Patreon. So it's pretty cool. So check it out if you're interested. I cut some more details just out of strips of chipboard and random things that I had in my bits box. If you do the shapes in kind of a random, interesting way, for some reason it looks right. I have no idea what this little white thing is, but I've had it in a tub kicking around for a couple months, and it looks pretty good right there. Another piece just above gives it an even more sci-fi look. Funny how that works out. Here's a piece of cereal box that I've cut some panel shapes on, and I'm going to pre-bend it by rolling it around this bottle of vitamins. I then carefully cut out the panels, and they've maintained a little bit of their curve, which makes it easier to glue them on to the outside of my can here. This is tricky because the glue bonds almost instantly, the super glue with this porous paper material, and you want to make sure that you're getting the panel lines in between these panels of a nice even thickness. You don't want it to be thin in one end and thick on the other like a child slicing a loaf of bread. You want it to be nice and as even as you can. If it's not perfect, no one's gonna notice, but do your best. This adds quite a nice detail to that smooth surface of the cylinder. Here's a little toy tank, and I'm going to take the turret off and use that as sort of a bit of electronics with an antenna. Pretty happy how that worked out. Doesn't look like a tank when it's pointing up like that. Just clean up some of that excess construction adhesive while it's still wet. You'll thank yourself later. The top part of the tank is also a nice little detailed piece, and then I'm going to use some googly eyes. And these googly eyes have that nice circular shape that's very science fiction-y. So I'm going to glue that over that little bump that was left from the turret attachment, fill the back side with construction adhesive, and just slap that on there. Quite a lot of detail in one simple piece. Pretty happy with that. Here I'm just gluing some simple shapes into a negative space that I left in the panels. It looks like a port or some sort of socket of some kind, but it really works for detailing a simple space. Next I'm going to use one of those pieces that goes on the bottom of a chair leg so it doesn't scratch. And you want to touch it 9 times for good luck. There you go. 10, 11, 12. Nice. Now I'm gluing on my science fiction-y piece to the thing there. As you can tell, there's no technical terms for things that you just invent, but I use gesso to protect the foam, spray the whole thing gray, and then come from above with a zenithal white spray. This leaves a bit of a subtle warm gray shadow underneath. Remember to always wear a mask when spray painting. If not, it could be extremely painful. For you. Alright, as you can see, I'm switching my mat out for my dirty mat because we're about to get messy. I cover the whole thing in a thin black wash. This is, I was getting pretty nervous during this stage, to be honest, because it looked pretty cool, and then this was just kind of beading up everywhere and looked really, really messy. So I came back in with a paper towel and started wiping away where it had beaded up on my flat surfaces, and it ended up getting this nice streaky appearance, which I'm pretty happy with at the end of the day. It's absolutely filthy, but I think that kind of works out. It kind of reminds me of the buildings you see in Star Wars, which are always covered in carbon scoring or whatever you would call that. But as you can see, I'm doing this one band along here black, and that could be maybe a window or something. It just looks good. Who am I kidding? So I come back in with some very thin black paint and I do some nice dirty streaks. And these really add to that disheveled, sort of interesting, worn appearance that I'm kind of leaning into now that I've covered this whole thing in this filthy wash. And then once that's done, I come back in with some white and just pick out the edges to make sure that it's catching light in all the right places and really accentuating those shapes. And then for the last step, I'm going to come in with some raw sienna paint and just do some dirty streaks of orange. And this really sells the mechanical, used, interesting nature of this piece. And I'm really pleased with how these tied everything together. They added a little bit of warmth and a little bit of grounding, and there it is. I'm absolutely thrilled with how this one came out. A lot of the pieces that I started with, the Tupperware, the fish tank thing, they were pretty featureless, boring pieces. But with just some cardboard paneling and a few found bits from the dollar store and from old squirt guns, I was able to add so much detail, and I'm totally stoked about that. I'd like to take a minute to thank all of my patrons. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. First, my Mastercrafter patrons, Robert Reisholt, Joseph Hobbs, Stephen Scott, Paypig69, Nadia Hamdi, Mike Huey. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to be seen in these credits, click the link in the description below. Thanks to all my new patrons, Mitch Doyle, Tony Sansonetti, Edward Cote, John Titor, Curtis Thompson, Ben Lomas, Spencer Leake. Thanks so much, guys. I really enjoyed doing this, and I still have a lot of pieces left, so I might do more in this set. Subscribe to find out. Let me know what you guys thought down in the comments. Alright you guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Eric's Hobby Workshop.